Hello, everyone, and welcome to Code Conversations. My name is Matthew Sheahan, and I am the host of this program. Before we begin, Code acknowledges that our association spans land across Turtle Island, which is the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples. We honor them as the original storytellers and stewards of this land. May we never forget their legacies, and may we learn well the lessons their descendants have to teach us about living on and with the earth. We will practice the sign of respect, acknowledge the rich history of these lands and Indigenous nations, honor the truth of the past, and uphold our original treaty, the Turo Wampum, to peacefully care for the land and each other through our drama and dance teaching practices. And I, right now, am coming to you from the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Wendat Huron peoples. When we originally created this call to action, it was important for Code to create it not as a land acknowledgement, but as a call for us to make sure that we hold dear that we need to take action, not just make promises. So today, joining me, we have several former Code presidents to talk about some past experiences and other questions. So first, we're going to go around the room and just quickly introduce everyone with a little wave. So first, we have Judith Doan, Ron Dodson, Mac Dodge, Christine Jackson, Kim Snider, Brooke Charlebois, Sarah Papoff, and Jane Deluzio. And I feel like I'm in Hollywood Squares or something right here. So we're going to start with Judith with the first question. And the first question was, well, not really a question, more about just a request. Tell me about your favorite memory of your time as Code president.
So I was a Code president in 1985 and 86, probably before some of you were born. However, no, Matt, it might just be
1980. I was born in 1980, so I was 5.
Okay, well, I was already now president of Code, and for the 2 years previous to that, I was the conference chair, and we had our conferences at the Bayview Wildwood Resort, which is on Sparrow Lake, I guess in Muskoka, and it was always in the fall. It had previously been at universities in the spring. And so this was a big thing. And it was such a glorious environment to begin with that various things really stayed with me. And I suppose the biggest thing was the first evening of the conference when all of the participants got together and with Bob Barton and David Booth, who selected a source, we did a collective creation. Now, I was still a relatively new teacher at the time, so this was something quite new. I'd never experienced this before. Essentially, we were to choose an area that we would explore, a particular technique. So it might be movement, it might be choral speaking, or a dramatic scene, and creating the environment visually, or even through sound effects. That kind of choice. Those were the things we were given. And we got together with the people in our group, most we didn't know, and we explored the source. Bob and David would wander around, kind of keeping an eye on everything. And eventually, they would have a pretty good sense of how they would put it together, almost like puzzle pieces. And, then they would come up and say, you're going to go after such and such a group. Okay, so we knew that. And then it became very much an orchestrated piece, almost like a conductor. Not that they stood there conducting, but you just picked up your cues. And I don't know why, but it was quite magical. And for me, creative collective creations in general, I know not everybody is a big fan, but they were for me. So that's my favorite memory.
That's amazing. All right, Ron Dodson, favorite memory as Code president.
Well, with your permission, I want to do two very brief ones. The first one goes around the secondary course profile project, which happened in the late 90s. And it had to do with things like the secrecy around the elementary drama and dance profiles and curriculum. Driving with Jane and with Wayne Fairhead at 1,000 miles an hour, it seemed, down to Kingston to vet one of the supposed bidders on who was going to actually oversee the course profiles. and all kinds of things. Mac and Jane were partners in crime, and Christine was involved in that as well. And it was a really good time socially and spiritually and all that kind of thing. But it was also a good time to learn. And it wouldn't have happened if code hadn't been at the forefront of the curriculum issues. The second thing has to do with the conferences, to echo what Judith has just said. And that is that I remember distinctly walking into my first and second and third code conferences well before I was involved with the running of the organization, and thinking, these are my people. I found my people, you know, because everybody in Ontario then as now, and likely even more so in the future, was working in a vacuum. You were the drama teacher, you were the dance teacher in your school, if you had a dance program, and you worked on your own, and you found the people to help you, and all those people came together at Code. And in those days, a Code conference of 300 to 400 drama and dance teachers was not uncommon. And it was just one of those moments where you kind of said, as I said at the outset, these are my people.
Amazing. Agreed. Mac Dodge, favorite memory as Code president?
Well, like Judith, I started back just after Woodstock and teaching. And I came from Malthouse College, and I was a phys ed drama teacher, and then it was theater. But it was Code, the early Code conferences, where I went and attended and realized that this was a whole different way of learning. It was something that drama could bring to the classroom. And every Code conference, there was always something that I could bring back to my classroom. And the experiences there are what really drove me to continue. And I probably wasn't a great president, but I could really sell a t-shirt at the conferences. That was the next thing I think that's important to remember. And then eventually, you know, connected with Ron and Jane and the people who were keeping Code alive. And I was more than willing to act as president for a few years. And I think as president, that the big thing that I remember, two things: the conferences again continued to connect to hundreds of teachers across Ontario, eventually becoming drama and dance. And as a group, when we organized the conferences and started to bring in international people and like Jonathan Nealons and so on, continued to find ways to bring great teaching, drama teaching, to the classroom. And that was so important. And then it finally culminated, as Ron said, when the, I guess the ministry decided that the arts curriculum would be created by the subject councils. And that's when, you know, for me anyway, it was the most exciting time as president and as a member of Code to be down to Kingston and spending days figuring out what arts curriculum would work in the classroom. And it was the arts curriculum as well as the profiles that we created. So they were the memories that I have as president, and certainly memories that Code changed my ability to teach and my whole approach to teaching. Yeah.
Amazing. Christine Jackson, favorite memory?
Oh, wow. Well, like I'm going to echo everyone who spoke so far about the thrill of finding your people. But if I were to share a specific story from when I was president, it would be that one of the years I was president, we decided to do regional conferences, like stripped down version of the Code conference. And in one of the places where we brought people together for a one-day conference, we had a group of students perform. And at that time, it was sort of a quiet time after the money that flowed and the gatherings around the course profiles and curriculum. It was quieter. So we really focused on membership. We brought people together and students together. And we focused a lot on dance because dance was new in the elementary curriculum. And we had a group of students perform African dance from Kenya. And I will just never forget the vibrancy in the room, the excitement, the connection between teachers and students. The room was packed, it was filthy, people were sitting on the dirty carpet, but I can't remember a more exciting moment. And it was really significant because it was dance, because it centered a non-Western form of dance, and the student voice through dance was just so strong, so clear, and so impactful on all of us, I think.
Amazing. Now over to the person who roped me into the management board, Kim Snider.
I can say that for lots of people here. I'm quite good at that. My memory is more of a personal one, and actually it happened just before I became president and sort of the lead up, and it involves Mr. Ron Dodson. It was at the 40th conference, which I think for anyone who was there at the 40th conference, it was a really special event. And I remember I was on the planning committee, and one of the things we really wanted to do was honor the history and legacy of code, and also recognize that most of the people who were coming to the conference were new. Often it was their first code conference, and we were trying to figure out how to bring those pieces together. And so on the Friday night, we had like a mentorship mixer, where people arrived, and if you were like new to the conference, you had like a specific thing that you were wearing, like a little brooch. And then if you were someone who had been to many code conferences, you got something different, and then people paired up and talked. And during that social mixing, as everyone was talking, Ron and I sat down at a table and got into a conversation with Helen Dunlop, who was the first leader of code, wasn't president at that time, but first leader of code, and Bob Barton, and I believe Juliana Saxton also sat down with us as well. And so here I was, knowing I was going to become president soon. And Ron was kind of connecting me to these people, and they were sharing all these stories, some wild stories too of code conferences gone by. But I remember feeling in that moment really welcome and very connected, and very much like understanding that I was part of this longer history of all of these people who had helped to form such an amazing organization. And it was daunting, but also really exciting. And I think that for me, that moment has always resonated with me to like understand the history of code, but also looking forward to all of the new people that are constantly joining the organization and are excited to get involved. So that's my memory from the 40th.
Amazing. Over to Brooke Charlebois.
I have two really quick ones. The first is my very first code conference when I was a brand new teacher. And I had a background in theater and dance, but not drama. And I went into this amazing workshop, and I just remember this feeling, experiencing process drama for the first time, and thinking, oh my gosh, this is what I get to do. And the workshop was actually on The Haunting of Rosedale, taught by Kim Snider. And many years later, when I became friends with Kim, I so clearly remember her and her colleague Stephen running that workshop, and I used kind of variations of that for many years in my teaching. And it was just such an amazing moment to see something, to see drama, something that I knew really well, done in such a different way that I could really envision working well with students. And the second one is a moment from when I was president. It just so happened by terrible planning on my part that my presidency fell over both of my mat leaves. I had two children very close together. right at the moment when I became president. I think my oldest was about 5 months old. And so I had a baby, and I had a very young toddler, and I had just introduced Christine Jackson to speak at one of the code conferences. And as I turned to go and sit down, and Christine's talking about all this awesome stuff about dance education, my oldest kid is just to the side dancing. Oh, and there, that said kid is in the background there, just dancing at the side of the conference ballroom. And I just remember, kind of laughing to myself, thinking, yep, this is exactly why we do what we do, because kids move and they love to explore and express themselves, and they don't stop even after they've outgrown their toddlerhood and are cringy tweens. But yeah, those are mine.
We didn't know each other then, but I was a delegate, and I saw you go up and introduce the president. You're holding a baby. I'm like, whoa, that is a person who can manage a lot at one time. All right, over to Sarah Papoff.
I remember to unmute. It's so lovely to hear these memories, because so many of them are tweaking other memories. Matt, from being brought in by Kim in much the same way, and remembering my own children dancing and playing with Brooke's children as they all came to a code conference, and the Metro Toronto rep I sat at, and just that sense of community that really lives in my memories of code, that powerful sense, Ron, of being together. And I'm going to indulge in two quick memories as well, mindful of the time. So one day, whilst on a baseball diamond, I got a phone call from, we had reached out to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Subject Association from Jody Williams, who was the co-chair there. And that began a really, I think, a beautiful partnership, Matt, that I know continues today. And I have many powerful memories of that partnership. But I remember a conference that was, I believe, at Deerhurst, that culminated in a circle dance, in a social dance. And there were really an incredible number of folks partnering from a number of different places, internationally and locally. But I remember that circle dance. And I remember thinking, isn't it wonderful that we can have a social dance and truly learn from folks like Ray John Jr. what that is and what it means in an authentic, non-settler way, and participate as partners, as treaty partners. And I just remember that conference as being so vibrant and full of new ideas. And the initial visit to Mississauga of the Credit, to Nancy Rose Lodge, as being such a powerful beginning to that learning for me. And it really changed my pathway as an educator to that partnership, and in ways that still continue today. And the second memory, very quickly, goes back to those roots of code, which is having the opportunity to learn from the drama dance elders in Ontario, and not forgetting the masterclass that David Booth taught, that I participated in at a code conference. My goodness, I guess that was in
2016.
Not the 40th, but it was the next conference at Niagara-on-the-Lake, and really getting to witness and observe students and the magic of process drama with David Booth. And so that really renewed my energy in terms of where drama in Ontario had come from and where it was going. So those two pieces.
Amazing. Jane Deluzio, favorite memory as code president?
Listening to everybody reminds me of the fact that I've been in code for so many years, and that I was positioned to become president when my daughter became very ill, and I could not move forward into that position. And I continued to be a member of code, and was invited to come back as president by 3 of the former presidents here. And I said, well, as long as I can start as vice president, because I knew everything had changed. So listening to everybody speak, everything hadn't changed, but pedagogy had changed. So my memories, so many of them are not as president that are joyful and wonderful, but as president, for me, in the 2 years that I was president, in 2019, we had 2020, sorry, we had our conference in Hamilton because we were planning our next code conference to be in Hamilton. And I think the co-chairs of that were Kim and Brooke, right?
Yep.
Sarah, you weren't part of that co-chair part. So we planned to be there so we could look at the rooms and understand everything. And but what I remember is on the Saturday when we started doing the planned activities, there were so many planned activities. We had a new equity focus, but the really highlight for me was to sitting at the back of the room, and we had a room with almost every single one of our regional coordinators present, and they were in a circle and these are people from all across the province sitting together face to face and listening and being inspired by everything that they planned. And this is the group that said, yeah, we'll make a personal video with a resource that fits for COVID and put it online, all of us, and they did. So, and listening to the plans for the conference is just the most uplifting and inspiring moment. We finished the conference, the retreat, and on Monday, COVID was officially declared official. So we didn't get to have that conference until 2022. I guess I want to say that the next most special memory that I can say in a very short time is that this code management board, filled with hardworking teachers who faced the worst shift into a nightmare world of trying to figure out how they were going to be teaching and the different rules and regulations that were thrown at them. The people on this board, regardless of all of that, voluntarily worked into the summer to create COVID adapted resources, to have resources available for secondary, specialists, elementary of all grades, and for parents who are struggling with at home. I remember creating a message for people's signatures to say, we're done, so that people didn't answer their email, saying, don't answer your email, you need a break. So I guess that those two memories are very powerful, both their dedication and how hard they pushed themselves to give throughout that crisis.
Amazing. All right, so question 2, and we're going to go back to Judith, just so everyone has a chance to share at the same time. Oh, don't make that face, Judith. You're going to have a great answer, I know. It's a long question, so feel free to use whatever part of the question you want. Why code then, and why code now? Why is the history and longevity of this organization important?
Well, I think I'll start with the history part and the longevity of the organization. And mainly because I think history is who we are and that we learn from our past. And code has a past. It's actually 53 years and counting, right? So code then. Well, believe it or not, I wasn't there right at the very start, right? I was probably still in high school. But those pioneer days were important ones. And I know that Kim mentioned Helen Dunlop, and again, like I've met the woman, I don't really know her, but she was quite an inspirational individual, and she really was the person who chaired the Theatre Arts Committee for the Department of Education back in the 60s. I think I looked it up, 65 to 69, and of course in those years it was called Theatre Arts. As it was when I first started teaching, it was called Theatre Arts. It changed quickly after that into Dramatic Arts, but it was Helen, I think, who really stressed the idea and nurtured the acceptance of drama as both a subject and a methodology, and who basically opened up people's eyes. The other thing too is that the Code Conference it didn't start until, I guess, 1970 is when Code actually came into existence. And 71 was when they had their first conference. And again, that was before my time. However, I do know that there was, it was at the Royal York, that there was a conference and people came together and they came up with this. And that the first conference was in 71, and I think it was at Queen's University, and Michael Wilson was the first president. And just a note, Helen was never a president of Code, but she was instrumental in forming the organization. I think too, one of the things that is important is that faculties of education across the province started to offer dramatic arts or theater arts at the time as a subject that you should teach. And certainly at the secondary level, and I very quickly say I'm not sure, I'm not that well versed on the elementary. But I know, having gone to the Faculty of Ed way back in the late 70s, and had, you know, David Booth and Chuck Lundy and Juliana Saxton, they all mentioned Code. I don't know if Code was something that other professors pushed, but certainly it was mentioned there. And I will give a little nod to Wayne Fairhead, because I had him as an associate teacher, and he was the one who really made me think about joining and joining the executive. I had already met him at a conference, but he was paramount in my joining it. And the 1980s, certainly I was now teaching, that was when Code conferences were really de rigueur across the province. It wasn't just Toronto, it was people from everywhere. And I think Matt had mentioned that. And it was an exciting time. There was, I don't know, determination and passion for drama, and people were really reinvigorated, and they went back to their classrooms and to their schools. And like many, I was the only drama teacher, but that ability to connect with other people was so inspiring that I think people took that and really started to build rich programs throughout the province. So that's the past. The now, of course, you know, from 1970, it was Council of Drama and Education until when dance ended up joining in 1998, I think. And we're now an organization that's more inclusive, and, you know, the Council of Ontario Drama and Dance Educators is kind of a mainstay for people. What I think has happened is that universities don't offer the same kind of training anymore. And therefore, I mean, when Kim says people are going off to New Zealand to take courses in drama to teach, and I realize it's a 1-year course there as opposed to the 2, I think that has in fact really affected where things have gone. Certainly Code has always been a political voice, always, from the very get-go. You know, the arts have always had to fight, always. They're seen, I hate to say, as, you know, less than essential, but we know how essential they are. And all of the offerings we have, whether it's workshops or whether it's newsletters or whether it's a journal like Provocations, or in the past, you know, it was Drama Contact. The outreach is significant for the subject association, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's lived as long as it has and will continue to. And I know that Code will continue to preserve, I guess, our legacy as drama teachers, and rally and unite and strategize and advocate for drama. We have to. It's so needed, particularly these days.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judith. I agree with everything you just said there. Ron Dodson, why Code then? Why Code now?
Well, for me, thinking about that question brings one word to mind, and that's the word vulnerable. When we think about the individual teachers in our midst, when we think about the subject itself, when we think about the students in particular, and the vulnerabilities that all of those groups have, and the vulnerabilities that the curriculum has, because it's a politicized world that we live in, I think that code's absolutely necessary, and that's where a good deal of the roots of it came from. And I'm totally in awe of what Judith just said. So I'll try not to repeat some of those points. But I think that when we start to think about how code has grown and how it has dealt with those vulnerabilities, there was a time when code was part of Theatre Canada, and was one of the original members of that group back in the, I think, late 1990s and early 2000s. I could be wrong on those dates. And the same goes for IDEA, the International Drama and Education Association, where code was one of the original founding members of IDEA. That is to say that we sent people to the first IDEA conference in Portugal in 1992. And from that, in 2004, Canada hosted IDEA, more than 1,000 delegates from around the world in Ottawa, because a lot of those folks felt vulnerable as well, and they wanted help, they wanted support, they wanted direction, they wanted focus. And I don't think much has changed in that world. Theatre Canada is gone. IDEA is still around and is taking some new directions, as it should. But the point being that all those vulnerable populations serve students, and the students who are at the sort of the tip of the triangle in terms of their needs haven't changed. In fact, their needs have become even greater. And those vulnerabilities that have been exposed over the years, and the code has served to support and to work with, are really important. And so that's why I think code has been and will continue to be a force in Ontario education. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Ron. Mac Dodge, why code then? Why code now?
Well, as I said, code, I think, was very important. I started in the 70s teaching, and it was very important to teachers because it was a new way of learning. It was an authentic way of learning. And along with that came, I think it was Gardner who came along with the multiple intelligences. Mm-hmm. And that sort of gave academic legitimacy to what was happening with code. That is, interpersonal intelligence, which means that, there are ways of learning and ways of communicating that lie within drama that are important. And they're important to a lot of students, and they're important for teachers to understand that that's the way a lot of people learn. Some people learn through dance, some people learn, through language, but a lot of people learn through this thing we call drama, which is, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. So that was the one thing that at code conferences, historically, that fed me as a new teacher. And I could see it I went back, I taught in Niagara, and I went back there and, basically proselytized with my, with my colleagues as best I could. And there were a lot of teachers who were very receptive. And code was very important in those early years in terms of changing what happened in the classroom. And this was mainly secondary. It did also affect elementary as I think code started to develop ways of communicating with them. The other thing was Wayne Fairhead. There were people in code. Code was, it's the Council of Drama and Education. But it was also through people like Wayne Fairhead and even Jonathan Nealons, where theater was included. And so there was I guess in the universities, there was a debate about theater and drama. And Nora Morgan was instrumental. She started at Niagara College and then at Brock University, and exploring, I'll say loosely, but sort of a forum theater But this whole idea of theater and how it connects to drama, and how understanding about other people in the world through drama connects very strongly to being a performer and trying to figure out how to present something in theater. So anyway, historically, I think code has always had that connection with theater. And I think that was important. And especially in Niagara, we developed, a lot of the high schools developed playwriting courses, and we connected with Sears and so on. Now, I would have to say that code, you know, after with Ron and Jane and a few people, we developed the curriculum, the profiles, the arts curriculum. Then the question became, will this affect what happens in the classroom? We all knew, I think, as people who involved in code and drama, we all knew that it's important to students. It's important to the way students learn and teachers can teach. But will it make a difference in terms of what happens in the classroom? I think, I don't know, I've been out of teaching for a long time. I've been retired selfishly on the West Coast here, pursuing a film career that's going nowhere, and working in community theater. But it seems to me the challenge when I left at the turn of the century was, will the arts in general, and drama in particular, will it survive secondary and elementary? And I know it's only through code, and probably the code conferences, that will happen. So bravo to the young faces I see. And I hope you continue to push to support teachers in the classroom.
Thanks so much, Mac. Christine Jackson, why code then, why code now? Oh, you're muted right now, Christine. It's okay. Happens to all of us.
Code happens to all of us. Code then, I mean, I would really pick up on a lot of what we just heard. I mean, I think when I look back, it was a thrilling time of innovation, new ideas, resistance to old pedagogy, a democratization of learning through drama. So, you know, code actively brought international experts to an assembly of teachers. It was thrilling. So we had Jonathan Nealons and Warwick Dodson, and, you know, Dorothy Heskett came. And so it was a very exciting time that placed drama as this kind of radical way of teaching. So code was really instrumental in facilitating that and exposing more than exposing, introducing teachers to new ways of teaching, really. And that really connects to what I think about when I think about code now. And code is, you know, continues to do such important and good work. I think we're living in really critical times that are hard for youth, times that are confusing and complex and ridden with anxiety, but they're also filled with hope and inspiration because the canon is expanding. We have new voices at the center, where we have BIPOC artists leading the way, and teachers taking note and expanding their teaching strategies and content in their classrooms. And I think code has taken a critical role in helping to facilitate that. What I would hope for code now is, how do we spark that innovation? How do we support the buildup of voices that are going to have the kind of international platform that people like Jonathan Nealons, Warwick Dodson, or closer to home, David Booth, who had that international presence for drama. And of course, we need that in both drama and in dance. So really looking forward to the support of new innovation with new teachers.
Amazing. Kim Snider, Why then? Why code then? Why code now?
Well, I was mainly president from 2010 to 2012. Then I had a brief reprise a few years later. And that was a tremendous time of growth for code. For anyone who was around during those years, it was a wild ride because the 2009 curriculum was so huge. It was so big. It was so exciting. And that brought a lot of attention to code as well. And I credit folks like Christine, who was at the ministry, who was instrumental in creating, a curriculum, which even now, 14 years later, holds up, I think, well in a lot of ways in comparison to some of the other curriculum I've seen in other parts of the world. And also Wendy Gibbons and Andre Gravelin, who led the organization before I took over in 2010. And that was a time of Code's largest curriculum writing project, just a massive project to create resources to support the curriculum. And that really got the attention of not just the ministry, but the world. Now I'm doing graduate work abroad and I meet people from different parts of the world. And it is astounding how many other countries have looked at our curriculum and at Code's resources when developing their own. The Ontario curriculum was looked at when Australia revised its curriculum, its national curriculum. I have folks here in New Zealand telling me they go on the Code website and use the resources. And so I think that people don't realize, such is the nature of our work, that we're focused on what's happening in our classrooms, that we don't always realize the reach that Code has. And that was really exciting to have that hard work recognized by the ministry and have, their faith in us to carry out these really huge projects. And now we're in a dip, right? And we don't have that relationship with the government anymore. But I think, its time will come again. And so we need to be well positioned for that next challenge, because it might be more of a fight next time to really get a great curriculum and to ensure that the arts are preserved and celebrated the way that we want. And I think that Code has the expertise and the capacity to do that advocacy work. But I think that that will be, that will be a big challenge in the years to come, and an exciting one. And let's hope like a more positive one than maybe what we've experienced in the last little while.
Awesome. I have not forgotten about Brooke Charlebois, but we're going to go to Sarah Papoff first. Sarah, why Code then? Why Code now?
So the three words came to mind. I was thinking of one word, and one is community. And I think that Code has built a powerful community and continues to do so. And that legacy has begun right from the beginning, as I listened to the wonderful stories of those early conferences that were, supporting the teachers that raised me as a young person. And allowed me to feel inspired in drama as a student to want to continue this work and become a teacher in elementary school, all the way through to when I joined Code through the ministry writing projects and getting to know folks and the excitement of building that. And the second is building capacity, and the idea that every time someone is part of the conference, is part of the resources, there's an incredible sense of building capacity in both drama and dance, and that Code has stayed relevant. So when Kim speaks about those years, I remember Wendy Gibbons, as I was a new board member, working with Stephen Waite to develop the website. And I think that had begun far before, I'm sure, with Christine and Jane, building that website, making it relevant and accessible, and then continuing to stay relevant so that the school I work in can have an entire school membership and that everyone can participate. That allowed Matthew to do things with COVID with Jane, where it was a smooth transition so that we could stay connected online and in person. Mm-hmm. I don't think Code has ever forgotten as a group that our roots are with each other. So when I think about Ken Robinson's speech about how schools kill creativity, and how drama and dance educators, we learn with our whole bodies. We teach with our whole bodies, and that's so relevant to students, that sense of embodied learning. That's what we do. So the fact that as educators, we've stayed together in that piece is critical. And it's an inclusive community and has had to change with the times. So again, during, I think it was either during Jane's presidency, likely finishing, and beforehand, and I was president in the sort of the teens of the 2000s, we were revising those resources and making sure they were still relevant and equitable, and changing what was there. What got written in 2009, well, it stands the test of time, needed examples that made sense in 2020, in 2019, in 2018. And I think Code has had the courage now to make sure that change is part of what we do in both drama and dance. And I think that's incredibly important. So thinking about things like process, drama, and role, and appropriation. So how does work happen in a way that makes sense, that represents students, and in which students have a voice in that work? And I think Code has done an excellent job in maintaining both the legacy of the past, and Matthew, you planning this talk reminds me of that, because look at us all here, and then staying relevant towards the future.
Awesome. Brooke Charlebois, why Code then, why Code now?
I don't want to repeat anything that's been said. So I think the only thing I would add is we've talked a lot about people like us that are very connected to the organization. And one group of people I think that we haven't talked about is just teachers who are kind of on the fringe of dance and drama. I'm an elementary teacher, and I have a background in dance and drama, but most teachers don't. And I've returned to the classroom this year for the first time in about 4 years. And it was a shock to me. The needs of students in post-COVID, the mental health stuff is so massive. We've kind of touched on teacher training, despite going to 2 years, not really being as great as it could be. And I think there are a lot of teachers that are feeling so overwhelmed and so burnt out. And, I've had so many conversations with people this fall, when the year started, talking about being June tired, and it was October. And so I think one way that Code continues to be important is as a lifeline to teachers who find themselves having to teach dance and drama, who know that these are important and that they support student well-being and student mental health, and provide, as Max said, like this multiple intelligence way of showing, what they know, but don't have the skills or the training or the know-how. And Code, the resources are so practical. The conference is, accessible to all levels of dance and drama. And I think that's a really important piece that we haven't talked about yet, that we have this outreach to folks. Yes, we can be all these things, and we can build these amazing leaders, and we can support all these wonderful international folks, and we can be inspired, but we can also be a lifeline for folks that just need to do their job and are looking for somewhere to be connected and resources to get them through till the end of the week. And I've certainly seen Code do that a lot in the last couple of years for people that just don't have the training or the know-how and want to do right by students and want something that's going to be, a practical, well thought out lesson. And that's where they come, is to the Code site or the Code conference, to get those ideas that will support them in that journey as they're learning how to teach dance and drama.
Amazing. Jane Deluzio, why Code then, why Code now?
As Brooke said, what everybody has said has added to this puzzle and this picture, and all of it is in my heart and in my mind, and I don't want to take us through all of it again. But what I do want to say is that Code then focused for sure on community and pedagogy. Many of us had theater degrees, not drama degrees, and we came into I remember David Booth, the very first specialist type A class, stood there and looked around at all of us and said, you are the most dangerous teachers we will ever bring into the drama classroom. We were all looking at each other. And he said, you think theater is what you're going to teach. You're worried about makeup and you're worried about all kinds of things that aren't important. And he really threw a gauntlet down about pedagogy and brought us into an international world of drama in education and a really sophisticated understanding about the relationship between process and product, because of course process and product is in theater, but how do you translate that into a drama classroom? So that was code then. It was pedagogy, but it was also, as everyone mentioned, community. Whoever said it first, I think you might have said it first here, Ron, but finding my people was the whole point. Why did we find the money to get to a code conference and stay in hotels? And we did it because it's the only reason I could keep going. I was the only teacher in my school at the beginning until you built up, and you had to find that community, because you just got worn down by people who had no clue what you did and were not particularly respectful about what you did. We had to prove ourselves over and over, community and pedagogy, and integrate with the pedagogies in our school so that we were working with other departments and bringing things to life. So what's the difference with code now? Add technology and add the idea that when we began, we were mostly secondary specialists in drama. And now we've expanded to include elementary teachers in a big way, because we've understood about the interdisciplinary, that as opposed to people who want, I guess I'll just say straight out, the idea of music wanting a music specialist to go and teach music to all the classes. Code keeps pushing and saying, we want every elementary teacher to feel comfortable to weave drama and dance into the work that they're doing in all their subjects. So we increase our elementary population, our communities increase. And technology has allowed us to form communities across our own country, with other countries internationally. And we have these incredible communities of drama and dance. And the dance, when we brought dance in, we did the same journey. We brought people who were used to competitions and studios and sitting in the splits as a high priority. And we helped them to say, there's all kinds of possibilities. It's great to be flexible, but that isn't the heart of why you're doing and using movements. That, it's just not the point of it. It's part of it. So to me, that's code then and code now. And I think code future, we're going to have to add what was always there was political astuteness, but I think technology really has helped our community and our pedagogy.
Amazing. All right. So with this final question, I realized, when we were answering that second question, I was like, oh man, everyone's going, oh, that's what I wanted to say. So we're going to kind of let people volunteer who wants to answer first. But if you could tell, you have stakeholders in education sitting right in front of you. What's the one reason for drama or drama and dance in education, why it needs to be supported and protected? And what would you tell them and why? And who would like to volunteer to answer that question first?
I would actually like to volunteer after saying I didn't want to do two in a row, because I actually wrote something short, and I'm going to read it simply because it's short. I think that the current focus on STEM subjects in education embodies the belief that certain subjects are more worthy, more academic than others. And the truth is that the complexities of our future on this planet rely on creative and critical thinking in every grade and in every single subject taught in our schools. Solutions are found by people thinking outside of the box and working together with a high degree of commitment and highly developed social skills. Local and global citizenship, mental and physical health, commitment to community, body-mind connections, and creative problem solving are at the heart of both dance and drama and of code. And they are more essential than ever and integral to the work of our scientists and engineers. All of the arts are immersed in technology and should be included in the recent government focus on giving all grade 9 students practical experiences in technology. Unlike music and visual arts, dance and drama has had to fight for the simple right to be included in the Ontario curriculum for decades. Now, in 2023, Ontario, and indeed all provinces, should be ashamed that all of the arts are still fighting to be taken seriously as the essential curricular subjects they are. Our schools, our kids, our planet needs drama and dance.
You gonna
There
mail
you
that
go,
to
Jane.
I was about to say, I'm like, we were working on a letter, and you were coming on my letter. I don't know why we're going with that. You've already written the letter. Yeah. Who would like to follow up on that?
That's a tough act to follow, Jane. I don't know.
I
Well,
can
anyway,
never meant that way. It was just where my heart is now, where
That's
we are
perfect.
now.
that's perfect. That's exactly where it should be. I'll take the risk in trying to follow that. So stakeholders in education include parents. So my message to parents is to support your teachers. Support your teachers, and then support your teachers. That's about it. For teachers, be teachers. Don't try to be parents. Let's try to get around to that sense of there being parents and teachers who work together. They have a common goal of helping their kids and supporting their kids and making them the best they can possibly be. But there seems to be a real blurring in my old eyes of some of those roles. The other thing I wanted to say was that, well, two other things actually. I would say that the reason for code is that it's an antidote. I used the word vulnerable before, so I want to use the companion word, is that it's an antidote. It treats some of the problems and difficulties that kids have, that they're not comfortable with expressing any other place or any other way or to any other teacher. I'm sure that each of us who are here have had kids disclose things to them that they would not have disclosed to their math teacher or to their science teacher or to any other teacher. And that's partially a function of simply who we are, our personalities, but it's also a function of the subject that we teach. And I think that when kids see that we're being vulnerable and they see that we have those sensibilities, that, you know, we are doing our best in an imperfect world to help them, then they respond to that. And so that idea of it being an antidote to all those kinds of things are really important. In terms of the ministry, I'd like to say to them a couple of things. One is support code, support drama and dance, support the arts all over the province. Because too often, and I think Mac and I are the only two people here who are former rural board teachers. I think too often, sorry, did I miss somebody? Oh, Matt, right, sorry. I think too often, and please don't take offense, anybody else, but when they think about what the world of education is, it stops at the boundaries of not just the GTA, but also Ottawa, Hamilton, London, Windsor, the metropolitan areas. And the kids in the rural areas still think about the arts as being something out there, something foreign, something not to be interested in. And it ends up with those kids often othering other kids. And that's not to say that it doesn't happen in the metropolitan areas, but I think it happens probably more frequently and in more of a deleterious form in rural areas. So to that end, I want to say to the ministry as a stakeholder in education, if you're putting $1 into resources, put $1.50 for those same resources into rural areas across Ontario. End of sermon.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, Ron. I teach in Picton. I'm in Prince Edward County, so I know all about rural schools. So what would you say to stakeholders in education about drama and dance?
Well, I'll go next.
All right, Mac.
First of all, I've sailed down Picton Way. It's a lovely place to be. When I think back to code and something to pass on to stakeholders, the thing that was passed on to me were stories. Whether it was Bob Martin or David Booth grabbing onto stories, traditional stories from all cultures, or I think it was Jonathan Elands who at the Niagara on the Lake, one of the Niagara on the Lake conferences, the 25th, drew on the historical stories of the period. And I think to the stakeholders, to the parents, as Ron said, to the teachers and students, and to the ministry, we must keep telling the stories through drama, and we must keep exploring those stories in an authentic way that only drama can do or provide. And it's the teaching strategies that we learned at the College of Ed that allowed us to get into those stories, and whether they're, the current stories of what's happening in our culture, or whether they're stories from the newspaper, wherever those stories come from, they have to be told and they must be explored and they can never be forgotten. And I think that's what is the job of code and of arts education as it exists in dance and drama, and even in the other arts as well. But particularly, I would say to the stakeholders, keep telling the stories, keep exploring the stories, keep understanding how important those stories are.
Awesome. All right,
Can I
Brooke.
piggyback?
Oh,
Can I
oh,
pick-
oh.
oh, no.
Brooke had her hand
No,
up.
it's
That
okay.
was like a really
No.
nice, like.
Yeah, you did it the right way, Brooke. Go ahead.
Go.
It's
No,
okay,
no.
Kim,
All right, Kim, then Brooke, let's go.
you can go. Kim.
I was gonna tell a story to piggyback on Mac. I think I'd tell them this story. During the first year of the COVID pandemic, I, like many other teachers, was teaching online. I taught online for the entire school year, as I know Sarah did at the TDSB virtual school. I taught all drama to students I never met, who did not know each other, who were from schools from all across Toronto. And I taught them from my home, and I taught them mostly without cameras because they didn't use their cameras. And there were many, many times where I questioned whether what I was doing was drama at all. And I had days where I thought things went well, and I had days where I was like, this is just an absolute disaster. And at the end of every single one of those drama courses, the students on the last day shared how much they loved the class, which was so confusing to me. Like, why did you love this? This is so strange. And they always said the same things. They said, this is the only class where we know each other, we talk to each other, we feel connected to each other, we feel like we're part of something. And to me, that just reaffirmed everything I know about drama. It affirms all the things I learned in Jane Deluzio's OAC drama class when I was a student, that what the arts do is they connect people, they build community. And at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. That's what I would say to the ministry. It's all about relationships. And in a time when with AI, you can get all the knowledge you need from a single Google search, what is education actually about? It's about connecting people, and I think that the arts does that in a way that many other subjects don't. Not to say that they can't, but I think we're ahead of the curve when it comes to those ideas of community and relationships. And so I think that's what needs to be at the heart of our curriculum and the way that we teach.
Fantastic. All right, anyone else want to fight Brooke for the next spot? No, I'm just kidding. Brooke Charlebois.
I was just gonna say I would actually tweak it, and there's not really anything that I want to tell the ministry, but I would ask them if they've ever been in a drama or dance classroom, because I think so often they put things on the chopping block and they don't necessarily have a true sense of what it is they are cutting. So before they decide to axe the arts curriculum or parts of the arts curriculum, would they come and spend a day in my class or in Kim's class or in a classroom in Sarah's school, or, for any of the amazing dance and drama teachers in the province working in their classrooms? Because I think of, my day today, and I can't imagine the ministry cutting dance and drama if they saw what went on. Even, in hot classrooms, the second last week of school, there's still amazing things happening. And I really truly have to believe that things are getting cut because there's a disassociation, that they think perhaps drama and dance are one thing and they really are not. So that would be my question. I wouldn't tell them anything, but I would ask if they actually knew what it was that they were cutting out of the curriculum.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Christine Jackson has the virtual hand up. Christine Jackson, what would you tell stakeholders in education?
Well, I think I would want to talk about, as others have referenced, the unique quality of learning that happens in our spaces. And I would say, if we're looking for ways to decolonize education, drama and dance spaces offer both the kinds of conditions that allow for many aspects of a decolonized curriculum, for instance, involving the whole child. I think this notion that our drama and dance spaces are spaces where connections are made is so important, but also where collisions happen. But the spaces allow us to work through those collisions. We put away our phones. We're not being bombarded by information from outside. We're face to face, body to body. We're in each other's face, and we figure some stuff out about what it means to be human. So I so agree with Brooke. How do we get the stakeholders in our spaces to see the kind of learning that happens? And depending if I had the willing ear of an audience, I might also speak to Celie Rous's pyramid of racial literacy, where right at the base of the pyramid, she places critical love. And I would really want to emphasize that in the spaces where we teach, there's a collective commitment that is nurtured for care and respect for different ways of being and different lived realities. So the potentially humanizing aspect of drama and dance, I think we can't overestimate.
Amazing. And then there were two. Judith Doan, you're up next.
Okay. Well, people have pretty much summarized, I think, what needs to be done. I can speak as a supply teacher now, that one of the things I see is that clearly STEM courses are being pushed. They're pretty much at the forefront, particularly for high school students, and the belief that any kind of technology is paramount. And because of that, I think dance and drama is even more essential. Almost everything seems to be online. I mean, kids in high school go on to Google Classroom or Brightspace and access all of their coursework, not necessarily in drama or in dance, but they do in every other course, at least that I've seen, right? And it seems to me that already kids are spending so much time on social media, on playing games, on their cell phones. They're pretty much addicted to it. They're tethered to it. And not just kids, teachers too, to some degree. And we've become so disconnected with people, with others, that all the sort of antisocial effects of our digital age and has sort of incentivized from taking away time with people, with other people. And it seems to me we do have to change that. We've gone in a direction that's become somewhat extreme. And the face-to-face communication is significant. We cannot lose that, or we're going to lose ourselves. We can't lose ourselves.
Amazing.
So I would say to the ministry and to anybody who's listening, go into a drama class, go into a dance class, go into an elementary school class where you can see kids who are working and talking and cooperating and listening actively and questioning and negotiating and collaborating and all those kinds of things that we do in drama. And know that that's the way we're supposed to live.
Amazing.
Here.
All right, Sarah, you got to follow everyone.
Oh my goodness, following everyone. I think I would start with that invitation that Brooke offered, that stakeholders need to come and see. They need to come and see what happens in schools and not just watch, talk to the children. It's critical to talk to kids. One of the first things that I get to do in my role is ask kids, what are you learning about? How'd you learn that? Tell me about that. And I think it's extremely important to give students an opportunity to share with stakeholders how they learn. And Christine really twigged, as she often does, the theory in me. And I started thinking about Dr. Goldie Muhammad's work and how important that is to the development of the new literacy curriculum, and as it connects, I believe, to all areas, including drama and dance. And one of the tenets of it is identity. So we've talked a lot about relationship and humanizing the curriculum, and drama and dance allows students to be in touch with learning about themselves and others, whether that is connecting in an embodied way, building a story, solving a problem, collaborating, connecting, or colliding, as Christine put it so beautifully. They are in touch with their own identities and the identities of their peers, their colleagues, or perhaps a really rich text or source, and that allows them then to explore the world around them. Drama and dance are skill-based, and I will never forget, I had a lot of mentorship through the TDSB arts department, and I will never forget Jill Lloyd-Jones saying to me, we don't expect children to multiply in a day. Why do we expect them to do a dance unit in a day or two? Absolutely not. There is skill. So I think we can apply Goldie Muhammad's framework to drama and dance. There is specific skill that is required to scaffold into how drama works, how dance work, and all of those pieces. And I can say right now that that is not always understood, and we need to build that capacity. Finally, there's intellect. Drama and dance help students solve critical problems about the world. It's intellectual work, it's thoughtful work, it's reflective work, and it's not surface level. And I think that is often widely misunderstood. And the final piece in her framework is criticality. And I'm going to say that the question is, how will instruction engage students thinking about power, equity, and the disruption of oppression? So when Christine referenced decolonization, drama and dance are powerful tools for students to unlearn, relearn, unpack, and rebuild and create the world around them. So they can actually use it as a powerful inquiry tool to imagine the future that they want to see, their lives, their world. And we're actually providing a really powerful tool that students can leverage. So I really believe even if we say to stakeholders, hey, here, look, here's one source of theory, and it applies to everything about drama and dance, come talk to students, come talk to teachers, and not for 15 minutes as it is happening in my building on Thursday. Come and really learn.
100%. Wow. There's a lot to, I mean, anyone watching this video would have to like take notes and like all the pearls of wisdom throughout. So I'm gonna, so many great stories, so many great points and recommendations. I'd like to thank Judith, Ron, Mac, Christine, Kim, Brooke, Sarah, and Jane for joining me today. And thank you so much for sharing.